Here, you take my word truck and you add the letters I-N. That's not a word. Trucking. No, it's not a word. I am sick of this. It happens every time. I am tired of this argument.
We could play Monopoly if you'd let me be the top hat.
Look, it's my show. It's my game. You can be the thimble. You can be the iron, but I'm the top hat, all right?
So is this where I yell live from New York?
No, it's another show, but thanks for trying anyway, Jerry. Just forget it.
No problem, Dave.
All right.
Welcome to The Last Talk Show. Tonight, I'm excited to talk to Dennis McNally, who is the publicist for the Dead in the 80s and 90s and has written a number of definitive books on the band, including A Long Strange Trip. And what else can I say? I'm excited to talk to him as we get ready to watch the Grateful Dead movie.
All the way from the island of Nantucket, Massachusetts, it's The Last Talk Show! Let's Talk Show!
Thank you for joining us. First of all, how are you dealing with the current state of the world? And where does the Dead fit into all of this, where we are now?
Well, the Dead fits into the way we are now, I suppose, because it taught a giant lesson about improvisation being the basis of their art, not only on stage, but in life, in dealing with business. As far as coping with the world, I drink as much as possible. It never occurred to me that the United States was going to become a theocracy, and it deeply disturbs me.
Sorry to start us on this note.
Yeah, I was about to say, do we really have to talk about reality?
No, sorry.
I want to talk about fantasy. Go on.
Okay, so let's talk about fantasy, or actually the reality of the Dead, which is also very interesting because I was reading a quote from your book, that Ramrod had said, the crew chief and one of the greatest men I've ever known said, at least it's not a real job. And it wasn't. It was at times more stressful and gritty and challenging than real job, but it wasn't one.
What Ramrod said was just one of the great lines I've ever heard to describe life with the Grateful Dead. As I say, he and I and 50 other guys had just spent 12 hours outside in Washington, D.C. In July with 100 degrees and as close to 100% humidity as imaginable. I mean, just truly, truly disgusting physical environment, working our butts off. And as he said, despite that, at least it's not a real job. It was a cause. It was an adventure, to steal a line from the U.S. Army. It was, it was all kinds of things. It just wasn't a straight, a regular job.
So one thing growing up in the 80s, my first Dead shows were in 84 was the first time I saw them it was an interesting era because we were right dead center in the middle of Just Say No, Reagan, It's America. This thing, and the Dead felt both like a flashback and carrying a torch from the past, but also felt out of time and almost futuristic in the way they were sharing information and the way the music presented things. But one of the most jarring things, and I wanted to just kind of run through a list of some of these things with you as in that role as publicist, is it was very jarring to suddenly see this band that was out of time and space suddenly be on Letterman.
And then right down there, and then that's it. Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah, well, after a while, see these? You build up calluses like on my fingers.
I get
okay,
it.
now go ahead, if you strum that.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah, it's a Proud Mary.
Really?
Yeah. Right. Great. All right. Working for the man.
Working for the
Yeah. Never lost the blues.
I never mind it along.
or suddenly show up on Merv Griffin or wherever they'd show up. You're like, wait a minute, they're part of our current reality also. That's very strange.
Hi, I'm Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead on MTV Music Television, the channel you've been waiting for.
Were there things they ended up being booked on that you were either like, well, this is weird, or what are we doing here? Or moments where you're like, oh no, what have I got us into? We're now talking to Good Morning America or whatever.
Come here, Uncle John's band, playing to the tide. Come on along and go.
He says they'll never make it. That's the Grateful Dead that you just saw, that you were listening to. A Dead concert is like no other. It's not the usual. They might last 1 or maybe 5 hours or more. So how do you, when you're having things are a little shaky in the group, how do you get up and go on and do your number?
We ignore each other on that level, you know.
Do you have you set up rules, though, for yourself to try to deal with this?
It's hard after 15 years, you know. You can't make rules for people to know you 15 years worth of knowing you. I mean, you know.
Any rule has a loophole in it.
Yeah, right.
And after 15 years, you're going to find a loophole. Like, for instance, if I don't like the way he does his hair, you know, there's not much I can do about it anymore.
Everything that happened to me with the Grateful Dead, and I mean, that includes introducing the band to the Vice President of the United States in the Oval Office. He's showing Jerry the Clinton's desk, which had been John Kennedy's desk, which he had gotten out of the Smithsonian, and which for anybody of my age and Jerry's age, you remember the pictures in Life magazine of John, who was then about 3 years old. This desk had a sort of secret compartment thing, and he was playing in this desk, and Gore is showing Jerry the desk, and I'm looking at them, and Gore is wearing, you know, I know nothing about such things, but $1,000 or $2,000, whatever, suit, and, you know, he's impeccably tailored, as you'd expect. And Jerry looks like an unmade bed. I mean, he's wearing sweatpants, and he's got beard dandruff all over his shirt, and, you know. And what was great about it was they were fascinated they were interested in each other as people. I am sure that Al Gore did not talk to anybody as sloppily dressed as Jerry that month, nor vice versa. Nor did Jerry talk with anybody that, you know, groomed that month. They didn't care. They were just interested in each other's minds. And, you know,
I feel like we may be at a moment where it's time to give Al some props for, this is a guy who was right. This is a guy who was right.
Yeah. Oh no. I have great respect for him, and the reason that he you know walked is that he was basically too sane for the kind of tap dance that politics has been in the last 20 years. It's just.
Yeah. I'm gonna buzz through a couple of appearances, just see if they spark anything. If you have a comment, feel free to pass. If you're like, amazing show, Playboy After Dark. Is there also a story about dosing the crew?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We dosed everybody. This was the Grateful Dead at their most reliably crazy. Yeah, it was 1969, and they had this new album, and you know, Warner Brothers got them on Playboy After Dark.
You've got kind of a stereo effect going on here with drums. You have two complete sets of drums and two drummers, obviously for a purpose.
Right.
But
Mutual annihilation.
I see. In other words, the guys kind of compete with one another. And,
Well, they more chase each other around. It's like the serpent that eats its own tail, you know, and it goes round and round like that. And if you can stand in between them, they make big figure eights on their sides in your head.
I don't think I'm going to stand between them. I think I'll
Take your pick.
stay back a little ways. But I noticed that the guys are near their instruments here,
Yes.
and the kids have kind of settled down. I wonder if we could get you to do a number for us.
Absolutely not.
There was a coffee urn that everybody drank from, and the road manager, the then road manager, a guy named Jonathan Reister, got out his little squeeze, a bottle of LSD, liquid LSD, and loaded up the coffee. And, you know, they're doing the show. And all of a sudden, lighting guys who are supposed to be focusing are sort of going, wow.
It may be the first televised acid test or something, right? I mean,
Yep,
yeah.
It's going on. Go back and watch it again.
What about they were on the Tom Snyder show.
Did you think when you were starting that it would ever evolve into this mystique that has come to surround the group called the Grateful Dead?
We didn't think when we were starting.
No, we didn't think. Really?
I was lucky enough to have Phil do a voice for us when I did a cartoon called Little Bush, and he agreed. We, through a booking agency, booked Phil to play the head of Big Pharma, and he did this wonderful. He's got a wonderful voice for cartoons.
I know you're a little strung out right now. You're having some side effects, but not all side effects are bad.
What are you talking about, Pilly?
What if I told you that some of the side effects drugs all causes are freedom, liberty, democracy, and the pursuit of sweet cash money?
I don't know. It all sounds like good stuff.
Look, don't take it from me. Take it from this marketing video, narrated by me.
I noticed that Jerry did a voice on Heart Beeps. Is that crazy? Am I reading that wrong? Or he actually did a voiceover work in something called Heart Beeps?
I believe it, but I can't remember.
After some intense research, discovered that Jerry Garcia is credited as Phil in Heart Beeps, and Phil is a series of guitar sounds which Jerry provided. So John Williams did the score, but Jerry did Phil's verbal sounds with his guitar.
You know, you're the first robot I ever built and programmed. And I want you to know that in spite of problems, you have been performing very well. You are extremely efficient. You aren't concerned about the coming absence of light now, are you? Good. Okay. Come on.
It's about as thrilling as a cold potato pancake.
Quick thing on tripping. We were lucky enough to have Bill join us in our movie, Have a Good Trip. He shared wonderful stories.
One time I had figured the wrong amount, and I had taken so much that I looked over at Mickey and said, I can't finish this set. I got to go to the dressing room. My cymbals were melting, and you know, you can take too much, and that's a mistake. I came home, and I was still real high, and you don't come down instantly, of course. And I sat down politely at my parents' dining room table, and it was breakfast. Son had just come up, and she was serving breakfast, of course, and served me a plate of eggs that looked like they were doing some kind of new modern dance on the stage. You know, some of this new gyration stuff going on. And everything was moving around. The sausages were dancing, you know, making little buildings and things. How's breakfast, Billy? Fine. Oh, you're gonna eat it.
Do you have a trip you'd like to share?
So I had gotten to know someone who was really one of my first truly intimate friends. We were never physically intimate, just psychologically. And she, we were in Amherst, Massachusetts, and her family lived in Framingham, which is 80 miles away. And we dropped some window pane, probably the second or third time I'd done acid, and proceeded to drive to her house in Framingham. She was, among other things, her family owned horses. And the acid came on, and it was quite strong. And it reached the point where I couldn't look out the window. The moving, she was fine. She could handle it. She was driving, and it didn't seem to bother her. And I was at the point where I was looking at the floor of the car, looking at my feet, because there was too much visual input.
Let's don't drive. Let's have a sober buddy.
No driving. That's insane.
You want to be in the passenger seat. You don't want to be the driver.
I want to be driving. I don't want to sit there and think that person is seeing all the things I'm seeing. I think I better drive.
You know when you see those white lines, if you look way in the distance, they almost look like they're going up.
And I remember sitting there driving the car, and my hands were just doing this by themselves. It's almost like I could just sit and look out the window or whatever because my body was driving the car.
I eventually stop. I just completely stop because it's so steep. But I'm not falling back. And I don't know how that's possible. And then I realize I don't have my foot on the gas. I've just coasted to a stop on the Hollywood freeway.
The road went and disappeared, and I saw nothing but total blackness. And then there was this tiny little skull at the end of it, and it came forward, and in the skull was the road, and the mouth opened, and whoop, I got swallowed.
Don't drive on acid.
So anyway, it's like midnight, and we get to the barn at her family's farm. And so we go into the barn and we visit with her horse, Coachman, and say hello, and still tripping. It's
oh shit, I'm still tripping. What the? Whoa! Okay, stay calm. I don't have outlines anymore. That's okay. There's no boundary between me and space. This is a thing that happens. Oh.
We go into the living room and we put on some music, which was, I don't know what it was, but it was ugly on my ears. And Eileen lit a candle, which was this giant Hershey's Kiss. And it gave off this very sweet, overly sweet smell. And in the week before, I had read Naked Lunch. And the candle and the sort of lingering memories of Naked Lunch, I started feeling like the whole world was turning into these sugar crystals. And it wasn't an insectoid sugar crystals or something. It wasn't a good feeling.
This is no time to doze off like a freckled-faced boy on a fishing raft.
The fantasy sequences in Naked Lunch are so far out with creatures that resemble talking bug buttocks in one situation, and actually more than one situation, that they are all very funny by themselves.
It is one of the most unpleasant movies I've ever seen, and I hated most of it.
And finally, I turned to Eileen and I said, I don't like the music. And could we turn off the candle? Because it's really giving me the heebie-jeebies. And she went, sure. So we turned off the candle and we put on Working Men's Dead. And everything got a whole lot more relaxed. So that was my weirdest acid trip.
Yes, when you get lost.
The music play.
Is there a way to just quickly have you set up the cake story?
Things happen backstage of the Grateful Dead concerts, particularly in the late 60s. Okay, well, back in the late 60s, it was a fixed rule that you did not touch anything you didn't know, because in some cases, band members, or not band members, but crew members, whatever, made quite an effort to dose things. And there's the most famous one in which Goldfinger, who was a well-known drug dealer in their scene, dumped some colossal amount of LSD into the punch. And people were like, Hunter was lying on Market Street hallucinating lobsters attacking San Francisco. The cake was in one of those, in that realm. And Jerry, I just remember Jerry saying to the effect that it was as though it were glowing. You could see, just looking at it, that it was not your average cake. Yeah. And that he touched his finger to the frosting and had spent the rest of the night intensely focusing on playing just to be able to play. I mean, it was obviously has some experience with combining playing and LSD, but this was like one of the most extreme.
Okay, here's the story. There's one time we played. We were playing at the this guy who was like sort of a famous freak that ran around the scene in those days, comes in and he's got this big birthday cake. He's got this huge big birthday cake. I'm looking at it thinking that thing has got to be dosed. I just know this sucker. I know it's dosed. I'm looking at it and looking at it and thinking, yeah, I'm sure it's done. And then I said, but it looked good. It was beautiful. This beautiful big. So I thought, well, I'll just take a little of the frosting here. just I'll just take a little snack. So I took this, and then somebody comes in and says, yeah, we put about 800 hits of acid in that frosting, and I go, oh God, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm going to be totally fucking wiped out on this, So I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting to play, and we're going later, it gets getting later and later and later, and I'm coming on. Now I'm going on, like, the place is swimming, and I start to overhear people, and I'm going off in this paranoid space, and I'm thinking, God, this place is full of mafia guys, and they're all trying to kill me, I got that notion in my head, this guy comes in, he looks exactly like a mafia guy, he says, here, you want something to drink? And I'm like, poison, no thanks, It's like everybody is armed to the teeth, they're all trying to kill me, okay? So, and I'm waiting there to go on, oh shit, this is it, this is my last night on earth, I'm convinced of this now, still in this psychedelic roar, And so we're going down on stage, to go play, and I'm going out there and I'm thinking, oh God, Jesus, what have I done to deserve this? I'm going to go out there and play, and they're going to fucking kill me, So the only thing I could think of to do was I said, okay, I'm just going to play for my life. I'm going to play for my life. That's what I'm going to do, And so I played for my life, and they let me live. Ever since then, ever since then I thought that works, for me, is to play for my life, so, when I forget what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, I play for my life.
I feel it's really wrong to dose anybody because you're taking over their psychology. You're responsible for how they're going to be for 12 hours. And if they haven't taken acid before, you don't really have a right to do that.
The psychedelic experience, you go through these things, you come out of it with, sometimes it feels like a cliche. We're supposed to love each other. We're connected to trees, but sometimes those are very profound and often the true meaning of things, the arc of the history of the Grateful Dead is often described as the long strange trip you describe as your book. Is there one sentence or a couple of words that you take away of like, here's my takeaway, as cliche as it is or as profound as it is?
The one universal that I always felt that almost everyone came out of LSD, and as you earlier said, it's not for everybody. Some folks just are a little too rigid to be able to accept the looseness and the doubt of things just sort of sliding around in ways that you're not used to. That's what the Grateful Dead grasped, that improvisation is the only way to approach such experiences. But if there was one thing that almost everybody came out of their first or serious acid trip, it was simply the interconnection, that it's all one. I mean, I got that first time. I just was looking around and seeing that everything is connected. It's all one. Now, it took me 50 years, 40 years later to articulate that as a Zen Buddhist, which I am. But that is the essence of Buddhism. And I have not done LSD in 20 years, probably 30 years. But it took me to exactly the same place as what now 15 years of serious study of Buddhism has also, and it's what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interpenetration. we're all, we're all connected, and we should not. And one of the things is when you see anything in which people are like, he who has the most toys at the end wins the game. You look at it and go, God, just how dumb can you? I mean, sorry, no, it's like the more people with enough, the better. But anyway, that's
yeah. Will you just give us a little intro to the Grateful Dead movie, a little context? We're gonna watch it now. We're excited to see it, but what are the headlines? I know Jerry directed it, which is
right. So you're talking about the Grateful Dead movie shot in 1974. Well, I could just say it was improvised, and which should tell you something. Okay, the band has been has poured all of its money and energy into creating the so-called wall of sound. Okay, and they can't afford to. They can't afford it. I mean, no band, even the Rolling Stones at that era couldn't afford it. It required 2 stages and double the crew, and so they were going to take a hiatus. Bill Graham printed on the tickets, the last one. The band never said, this is it, we're done. They just said, we need to, take a break. And then Jerry had always been fascinated with film. So he says, why don't we shoot a movie? Now, of course, knowing nothing about this and not realizing the finances of it, they managed to hire a crew, and remember, this is film, not video, to do that, not realizing the complications that were going to ensue in trying to edit. But anyway, and Jerry had reached the point basically where Jerry had to sort of, it was his project, but it was the Grateful Dead's project, but it was, etc. And he had to kind of steal from the Grateful Dead to get the money to edit the picture. And he had to juggle things. Yeah. It is really, I think, one of the great documentaries of social institution. I mean, because Jerry understood what he was dealing with. And it's a beautiful portrait. And of course, just as an example, the opening animated sequence.
Yeah, when you're on a budget, animation is not the thing to run towards, but it's beautiful. It's an amazing piece of animation.
Exactly. And but they had no clue about how much it was going to cost. And he was doing this animation, like literally cell by cell. And there were complications on their complications eternally. And yet it's this wonderful portrait, and we're all very fortunate to have it.
Thank you for talking with us. Dennis, give us the last word.
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
For a while at the chime, catch sunflower bread, walking jingle in the midnight sun. Copper don't moan and drip of silver, come on out like a crane, as a quilt stuck out through a dream night wind. white Cheshire like a dime on a jet. A leaf of all colors plays a golden string fit up to a double. Eat waterfall over my back. Not a words come out of seal. Drum, I'll ring a silent bell beneath the shower of pearls in the eagle wing palace of the Queen Chinese.